Hello. Hi, everybody. Say hello, Gizzy. How are you, gang? How are you? It is Wednesday. It is Confessions of a Conveyancer. Gizzy's a little bit excited. I didn't get home long ago, so he hasn't seen me all day. So he might just be a little bit of crazy. Let's just hope he doesn't knock the light over. Anyway, how are you? That's Gizmo saying hello. Anyway, how are you, gang? I hope you're well. Wednesday, Confessions of a Conveyancer. Tonight's episodes are one a little bit close to my heart and one that I see a lot of issues with. So, are you self-employed? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a business owner? Are you a contractor? Are you a tradie working for yourself? You are not alone. There is 17% of us in the Australian workforce who are considered self-employed. And guess what? It is a whole heap harder for us to lend money and so be able to build our property portfolio because we are self-employed. We're considered high risk. And that's just the nature of what we do. We're self-employed. We don't have the guaranteed income coming in. So the banks really consider that we are high risk. So I have really seen a lot of clients get frustrated by this over the years. They are really disappointed. They feel like they earn good money and that they have good lending potential, but they keep getting knocked back just because they're self-employed. So I'm going to give you some really good tips to help you. And I think the biggest area that I see this in is a lot of tradies. A lot of tradies are subcontractors. And a lot of the time they miss out on being able to lend money because they just haven't put a couple of really good tips in place, really good rules in place, so that it makes it super attractive for them when they're going to increase their borrowing power with banks, okay? And you need to remember, this is not personal. It isn't. It feels like it. It definitely feels like it can be personal when the banks won't lend us money and you think, well, why will they lend money to the staff that work for me and I pay their pay slips, but they won't lend it to me? And it is simply because in this day and age, self-employed, contractors, entrepreneurs, startups, we are all considered high risk. Hi, Des. Hi, Rhiannon. Hey, Tim. Guys, thanks for jumping on. So with these tips that I'm going to give you, this is going to give you almost foolproof way to make sure that if you fit into these categories, you will be able to borrow money and you're not going to get stopped at the bank. Here's an example. I had a tradie see me about 3 months ago to buy a property. He had 100 grand in the bank, 100 grand in bank. He was making about 150,000 a year, and they wouldn't lend him money because he couldn't show where the 100,000 came from. He didn't have it in regular savings. The 150 grand that he was making, he wasn't documenting what he was making. He was doing way too many cash jobs and he couldn't prove his income. So what I'm going to do is give you some great tips. Margaret, I'm so happy you jumped on. You're going to love this one. I'm giving some tips to self-employed and contractors, what they can do to make it easier to be able to lend money from the banks. I'm sorry if I'm stuttering. Gizmo's a bit crazy and doing a bit crazy things, and he just ripped a cushion off the couch. That's what happens when I haven't been home in a while. All right, so let's get started. As I said, first of all, you're not alone. 17% of us fall into this category as self-employed. So that means there's 17% of the workforce out there that really needs to think about a little bit extra as to what we need to do to make sure that we can borrow money. And this isn't just for housing. This may be for business loans. It may be for a renovation. The same rules apply. So number one is timing. If you fall into this category, it's so important that you give yourself, you ready for this? 2 years financials. That's how much you're going to need. You need to have 2 years of steady financials that the bank can review before they'll really consider you an application, and a serious application. There are some banks that will consider less than 2 years, but why pigeonhole yourself into just one product? You really want to be able to go and see a finance broker and give them 2 years financials so that you have a whole array of financial options available to you. So it's not only just the 2 years for the bank, but if you're a startup or entrepreneur, or even if you've just started some contracting for 2 years, If you give yourself 2 years to get your financials, it also gives you an opportunity to have ridden out a few seasons and really be able to see how you can handle the ebbs and flows of it. Because we never make the same money every week. It's always up and down. So 2 years gives you an opportunity to ride it out. But 2 years is what you need in financials to be able to really have a strong application for a bank. That's pretty much a non-negotiable. That's number one. Number two is savings. When you're a startup or an entrepreneur or, you know, it can be really unmotivating and there's just no motivation to save money. You want to put all of it back into your business. You get a little bit more, you want to grow it somewhere else. And it's really easy to keep pulling your big profits and returning them into the business. But we have to remember that the banks want to see savings. They don't want to see that you pulled out 50 grand to make 100 grand. They still want to see that you've actually taken some of that money and put it into savings. Hey, Jess, Kylie, Sally. Sally, you might like this one. I'm talking about how entrepreneurs, startups, all self-employed people, how it is harder to lend money, and giving you some great tips what you can do to make sure that you can have a successful application, because we're all high risk. That's what the banks say, no matter what our profit is. So yes, Sally, perfect timing for you. So we've said number one is timing. Sal, 2 years. You got to have 2 years worth of financials, so a little bit more time for you, but that's cool because you've got 2 years where you can ride the ebbs and flows of your business and really see what works for you. 2, save some money. It is so hard if you're a startup or an entrepreneur or a business owner to really actually save money, because you find what you do is you're moving it into places where you need it to keep growing and keep doing things. Really challenge yourself. Just put some money away. Now, of course, that's probably not going to be every week because your pay is going to go up and down. So when you have some high profit times, skim some of that money off the top, put it in a bank account, and you can't touch it. The banks love that. They can see that you are actually saving money. That's the tough part. I know it. I always want to reinvest into the business, and I always want to be doing something else or building something else. And it is hard to just skim it off and put it away somewhere where you can't touch it. You're not allowed to put it back into the business. The bank will thank you for it. This one's a bit of a pain in the bum if you're a subcontractor. Pay your tax bills on time. Now, this may sound like a no-brainer, but good tax planning means that you usually don't actually pay your tax bills in time, and your accountant will do them a year later for you. You will have the tax in your bank account, paying off your mortgage and a few other things like that. So it sounds simple, but if you're going for a loan, you have to actually have it all paid up in advance. So there can't be any doing your tax return the following May, like most small businesses or, you know, self-employed do, so that you can pay it that 8 months later. Unfortunately, if it's that time when you're going to go for a loan, they'll want to see your most current tax returns. So tax returns, BAS installments, any of that type of stuff, you got to pay it up front. It sucks because when it comes to paying our BAS, we always think the money's better in our account than the tax office. We always pay it at the last minute. You got to think just a little bit differently when you're lending. So with that timing, you might actually think about that. For me personally, when I want to borrow money, I kind of always do it about August, because I've just done my financials and everything's done. I really don't want to do it at the end of a financial year and have to do all of those next finances and have the bank go through all of those again. You don't want to do that. No. Way too much effect on your cash flow. Now, this one might seem really simple too, but people forget it. Know your budget. All right, so it's easy to work out a budget if you are getting a salary. You get X amount of dollars, you pay this much on bills, you put this much aside, this much for living, XYZ. But when you are a self-employed contractor, entrepreneur, what have you, we really have flows with money. We might have cash flow problems. We might not really understand what the worth is of the business. So you don't decide what your budget is. I want you to see a finance broker or your bank and sit down and actually work out what is a budget that you can use. What budget can you work towards for building and buying a house, whatever it may be, you know, entering into a lease, whatever it is, it is not that easy to budget when you are in this self-employed space, and it's really important that you talk to professionals about it. My accountant looks at my budget every single month. He racks my knuckles if I do the wrong thing and spend too much money here and do it too there. And it sounds really simple, but it's actually not. So get a budget, yeah? Don't shop before you've got that budget. Get a financial advisor, accountant, mortgage broker. They'll be able to help you with that. Now, here's a little kicker. The last one, number 7, if you are self-employed and you're trying to get a loan and you want to make sure you give yourself the best success, learn how to pay off your loan faster. We are not like people that get salaries. Our money comes in drips and drabs, so you really need to think about how you're going to do it. One tip could be putting extra on your mortgage all the time, putting all your tax money on the mortgage all the time, and then when it's time to pay your tax bill, take it off, pay your tax bill, and what you've done is you've started paying off extra on your loan already. Even just by paying an extra $100 a week on that loan will really help. You need to remember that we need to do more to show the banks that we are strong applications, because we are in that high risk area. Now, if you're turning over $2 million a year and you're self-employed, I can tell you now, you are still high risk. It does not matter how much you earn. It all comes down to whether you're employed by someone else or whether you are employed by yourself. So I'm going to run over those again. Lozzie, this one's a good one for you too. Probably a little bit for you too, Lee. We're talking about how there's 17% in the workforce, people that are self-employed, entrepreneurs, business owners, contractors, you name it. We are what categorized as self-employed. So what that means is the banks think we're high risk. I have seen plenty of examples of people, especially tradespersons, who cannot get loans, who earn very good money, have very little debts, they have huge deposits, and they cannot get loans because they haven't followed these simple steps. 1, timing. 2 years financials, no matter what. Yeah, 2 years financials. 2, savings. It is super hard to save money when you work for yourself, because you want to keep throwing it back into the business. You want to build more, you want to grow more, you want to give to your staff, you know, you have a bit of profit, so you want to push it somewhere else to grow the business. You have to make sure, as hard as it is, you scoop a little bit of that profit off the top, put it into a savings account, and you cannot touch it. Banks are sure hard work at the moment. There is no doubt about it. And this is some tips to help you, because you going to a bank and getting a finance declined, you have hurt your credit rating. You have hurt your application. So I want you to do all of this before you go to the bank. This is what's going to help you. Number 3, pay all your tax bills on time. It sucks. It's actually not very financially smart to pay your tax bills on time if you're an entrepreneur or business owner. It's more important to pay them at the last second and keep that money in your account. But unfortunately, the banks will make sure you've paid it. So you've got to kind of budget for that. So for me, as I said before, whenever I'm looking at doing an investment, I kind of do it around the August mark. I get my accountant to push everything through in July. I've got a really strong application then come August. And I really think about it that way. Be organized. The bank wants to see you're organized. Do not go in there with a whole heap of scrap paper, written out books and say, oh, this is my accounts, this is how much I earned. They want to see profit and loss statements. They want to see depreciation. They want to see that you have been meeting with an accountant, that you are super organized. So it's not just because they want it to make it easier. It's because they want to have more faith in your business and what you do and how you are generating this income for yourself. If you walk in with a shoebox full of receipts and saying, oh, this is how much I earned for the year, can I lend some money? Compared to having, you know, profit and loss statements and detailed financials that have been prepared by an accountant, it's a much stronger representation of who you are and how you run your business as well. Know your budget. That was number 5. So know your budget. It can be really hard when you're dealing in high sums of money. So even me as an example, you know, I have a lot of money come in and out. It doesn't mean that, you know, you're making huge amounts of money just because you might have some ridiculously high amount of money coming in. Of course, we have a lot of money going out as well. So it can be hard sometimes for entrepreneurs and business owners to really set a personal budget. We can set business budgets, but actually set yourself a personal budget as to what you would be able to borrow. And I encourage you to get help with this, because you need someone who has a really good financial knowledge, where they can look at your business financials and they can establish what they think you can afford for a mortgage. Because remember, you're paying $1,500 a week or whatever on your mortgage. That sounds fine when times are good, but for me, I know when I have a Christmas shutdown for 3 weeks, my mortgage hurts. So it's about having that personal budget, but getting a financial person to do it. Meet with your mortgage broker, meet with your banker, your financial planner, whoever. Super important. I think I've covered them all, but that's it. And most of all, you're not alone. It is super frustrating being called high risk, especially when I know that all the girls that work for me can get a loan a lot easier than me, and I'm the one that writes their pay slips. And I've had a client only last week that said to me that they felt really personally attacked. They had owned a business for 30 years. They couldn't believe the amount of information the bank wanted from them. And they were saying, I've never felt like this. I feel really, it's really intrusive, and I feel like they don't trust me. And I had to explain to them that that is just how it is now. Since the Royal Commission, it's just tough to get money. And if you're in that high risk category because you're self-employed, that's just how it is. Follow those 7 steps. That is how you can set yourself up for success. Yeah. And then you've got such a stronger position that you will have options of how you can spend money. Sally, I'm glad that you found that. You're just a recent startup, so now is the perfect time to start putting those things in place, especially savings, because you're at that point in time where you're thinking, money, I'm still paying things off, and so it can be really hard. Lozzie, I've been told a couple of times now when Josh and I have gone for loans, Lauren technically doesn't exist. That's really nice. Your wife doesn't exist. Yes, it can be that way. And the number one thing is to remember, do not do cashies. I mean, I pay tax, so should everybody else, but people who do too much cash work, they're the ones that shoot them in the foot. You might have, as I said at the start of this, I had a client who had $100,000 in savings. He was earning $150,000 a year, and he couldn't get a loan for a $200,000 place because he couldn't prove where he was getting that money from. So yes, Lozzie, you exist. Actually, you're an amazing masseuse and myotherapist. So please drop your details, because Loz has helped me out, everybody, a lot. So drop your details, Loz. Let's get you some more work and make you legitimate. That was terrible. You're very legitimate. But I know it can be frustrating, and it feels like an attack. It feels like I work bloody hard for this money. I employ people and they can get loans so easy. Why is it so hard for me to get a loan? And it's hard. It's frustrating. And 7 steps to set you up so that you can not only have the dream of your own business or being self-employed, but you can have the dream of getting your dream home and having something that you've worked damn hard for. That's it. That's my Wednesday. We're going to finish with a confession. And my confession tonight is that I am full newsreader mode. So as you can tell, I'm all business. I got my hair done from work. I still got my nice work top on. I have pajama bottoms on. GJ Finance makes it easy. Do you know what? I didn't actually even know GJ Gardner did finance. So that is actually really good information. You should drop your website in there so people can see that, because I didn't know that you did that either. And that's actually really good to know, because construction finance is even harder to get. So that's when you are building a house, it can be really new. It's only new. I was going to say, because there's not much I don't know that's going on out in the world of property out there. I like to keep an eye on it, but drop some details in there. Lovely. Yes, Al. All business up top, party, no, not party downstairs, relax downstairs. And I may just show you Gizmo. He's finally settled and he's sleeping. Yeah, my boo-boo. Gang, thanks for jumping on. I hope you really found that useful. And I think the main thing is to remember that you guys are not alone. There is 17% of us. Do not take it personally, but I've given you some steps Take action, set yourself up so that you don't make mistakes. Set yourself up so that all the hard work that you put in, you can get that reward at the end by living in the house that you want to live, buying the commercial investment, setting up for your family. You can do it. And it's not personal. The banks think that we're all high risk. I'm cool with that. Set yourself up, make goals, make plans. You can do it. Thank you, everybody. I will see you next week.